When you think of jazz spectacles, you think of many of the great famous jazz players such as Miles Davis, Louis Armstrong, Ella Fitzgerald, but you never think about where some of the places they performed. And one of those great places is Baker's Keyboard Lounge in 20510 Livernois Avenue in Detroit, Michigan, the oldest jazz club in the world. Originally opened in 1934 by Chris and Fannie Baker, Baker's was originally meant to be a sandwich restaurant. Their son, Clarence, however, booked many jazz pianists to perform at their restaurant, and in 1939, his father, Chris, suffered from a stroke, leaving Clarence full control over what happened to the restaurant. So, Clarence decided to branch out from the local city, and with that move, Baker's became even more popular, which led to many great big jazz legends making their way to the big venue. Some of these artists being the great American jazz saxophonist John Coltrane, who released big records such as My Favorite Things or Giant Steps. Or the great famous Detroit jazz pianist Barry Harris, who created monumental change for the bebop movement. And Chick Corea, the great American jazz fusion artist. You even have living jazz legends today, such as Steve Wood, a jazz saxophonist local to Detroit, or Ralph Armstrong, a bass player, known for helping young Detroit jazz artists, or even the amazing James Carter. And here's a video of James Carter and Ralph Armstrong performing at Baker's Keyboard Lounge last year. I was even fortunate enough to have an interview with the great famous bass player Ralph Armstrong. Hello, can you please state your name and what is your experience with Baker's?
My name is Ralph Armstrong. Well, I first got my start at Baker's at the age of 14 years old. I was working there every Sunday with the great Earl Klugh. And from my experience at Baker's, I ended up working with all of the top names in jazz, from Tommy Flanagan to Milt Jackson to Kenny Burrell to Grady Tate, Blue Mitchell, just on and on, Leon Thomas, Eddie Jefferson. And that's was my launching point for my career. After that, I ended up working with the great John McLaughlin, the great English guitarist. And I was in London at the age of 17 years old recording with the London Symphony.
What's an experience at Baker's that is probably the most remarkable experience for you?
The most remarkable experience was seeing my teacher play, Ron Carter, as a kid. He was a great bassist who went to Cass Technical High School.
What would you tell someone for going to Baker's for their first time playing?
Well, what would I tell them? I would tell them this is a place that all the great jazz musicians of the 30s performed. And it was the first jazz establishment, or lounge if you want to call it, that had modern jazz. It really technically is the oldest jazz club in the world, because this is where guys like Bob Haggart performed, who were the first bass players that played jazz. Jimmy Blanton with Duke Ellington played there. My teacher, mentor, Ray Brown played there. So it's a melting pot of history. Blue Mitchell played there, Cab Calloway. Also, a lot of the great comedians like Red Fox and Moms Mabley performed there.
Okay. Thank you. Do you have any last words that you'd like to say?
My last words is say, practice all the time, read as much as you can, and never be closed-minded, and join the union.
Okay. Thank you. To conclude, Baker's Keyboard Lounge is a very iconic place in Detroit because it's the world's oldest jazz club, and it has hosted a variety of famous jazz artists from all periods and eras of jazz history.